a little bit
music.
Hi Jude, good to see you. We make a small intro, but we found we have a mistake in this one. So, und jetzt ist er auch schon rausgegangen. Ich glaube, wir haben ihn schockiert. Ah, we see you again.
Thank you, Joe. Sorry, my internet connection seems to be cutting in and out as you fellows were talking.
Yeah, that sometimes happens. We have the same problem, but it's okay. We listen to you, so and we can start with the presentation. And I think we all three have the same problem, and hopefully you can help us to inform us why graphite is so a boom at the moment, and we can talk a little bit about or discuss a little about the market and why it's so important that people invest in graphite.
I'll do my best. Should we start with Strike Graphite with a bit of a corporate overview, and then we'll talk about the...
I think it's better we go to this slide first, and then go back. That's maybe interesting for us. But I think we all three have the same problem, that we saw a lot of graphite deals coming up, and we are really familiar with the gold, silver, oil, and all these commodities, but graphite is for us really new, and our most important thing is why we must have graphite, and what is the reason why it's now so hip.
Graphite's quite a unique commodity. In it itself, it's really not that rare a commodity. Currently, in excess of 1 million tons per year of pure graphite is produced on an annual basis. And most of that graphite comes out of China. It's greater than 70% of the production. The next biggest producer of graphite is India. In total, there's approximately 40 operating mines in China. In Canada, for instance, which would be about the third or fourth largest producer in the world, there's only 2 operating mines. The operating mines all tend to be relatively small, maximum of 40,000 tons per year capacity. The largest Canadian operation is called Timcal, and it's about a 20,000 ton per year producer. The graphite's a little bit like the rare metal market insofar as different specs have different price or demand different prices. The coarser the grain, the graphite material that you can produce with the higher purities, the higher dollar value it demands. Oftentimes you hear the buzzword large flake graphite, and that refers to anything that's 80 mesh. A mesh size is it's a screen size that allows a certain amount of material to pass it through it as long as it is of a certain coarseness. In the case of 80 mesh, that's 177 microns across, or 0.177 millimeters. And so if you can produce a product that is large mesh, large flake graphite, i.e. greater than 80 mesh, and is 95% purity or better, that's where you'll get maximum value. And those current prices I've seen quoted anywhere from $2,500 to $3,500 per ton. The lower the mesh, or the higher the mesh and the lower the diameter of the graphite, the lower dollar values you will achieve for that product. And that just goes to the amount of uses that a certain product can have. Amorphous graphite, for instance, is used. Amorphous graphite is the finest grained graphite, and that's typically used in things like pencils, etc. And that value is about $1,000 to $1,500 per ton currently. Most of the Chinese demand or Chinese production is amorphous graphite. In fact, China gets a lot of its graphite from North Korea, a lot of its coarse grain graphite from North Korea.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I can translate a little bit. Sure. At the moment, I think it's really important that the people understand that the size of the graphite is important. Also es geht darum eigentlich, dass man unterscheidet zwischen ganz feinem Pulver vom Graphite und ein Graphite, das über 8 Mesh groß ist. Das heißt, ja, er hat die Definition genau gesagt, also 95% des normalen Graphites ist unter diesen 8 Mesh und das ganz feine Graphit wird verwendet, wie wir ihn kennen, in einem Bleistift. Die hohen, also die größeren Graphite, das ist der wertvollere Teil, der kostet you say $2,500 per ton, or?
For the coarse grain material, the approximate price range is $2,500 to $3,500. Now, the real growth in the market over the next several years is going to be in the battery-grade graphite. And in order to produce a battery-grade graphite, you need exceptionally high purity. And what you do is you take this coarse grain greater than 80 mesh graphite, and you can, if you have a large amount of that, you can upgrade that to something called spherical graphite. Spherical graphite is a higher purity product, 99.9% graphite, and it can be used in the battery market. The real growth in the future over the next several years will be from the battery market. The battery market is primarily getting its graphite currently from synthetic graphite, which is produced from oil and gas wells, and the cost of production is extremely high. It trades anywhere from $1,500 to $20,000 per ton. Consequently, there's a lot of room for large flake spherical graphite to creep into the synthetic graphite market and create an environment where you get these highly profitable, large margin graphite deposits. You know, some examples of existing graphite companies that are getting a lot of attention would be like Northern Graphite, which has a company called Bissett in Northern Ontario. It's approximately, I don't recall the exact grades and tonnages, but say roughly 40 million tons of graphite at almost 2% graphite. And the key with this project is not necessarily the grade, but the fact that it's a very high purity, large flake deposit, which is readily amenable to processing. Graphite.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
one question. Do you have an idea how large is the battery market, the graphite battery market, compared to the normal battery graphite market?
No,
or the synthetic graphite market, to compare to the existing graphite market?
Unfortunately, no, I don't have those figures in front of me, and I can't even speculate on it. But I am aware that a majority of the projected million-ton per year shortfall by 2020 is almost entirely due to the battery market. As green technologies emerge and there's more and more demand for batteries, all that excess production will go into to graphite batteries.
And one other question is, when you use this high mesh graphite and upgrade this to how do you call it,
A battery grade, spherical graphite.
Battery grade, yeah. The cost of them to grade this up, is it really per ton? Can you tell here another numbers or something?
So by upgrading the high mesh, greater than 95% carbon, large diameter graphite to a spherical or battery grade graphite, the prices increase from $2,500 to $3,500 per ton all the way into the $7,500 per ton range.
Okay.
So it's quite a dramatic jump. So if you can produce that high purity product, there's exceptional margins available for your operation.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
From my point of view is I'm an absolutely graphite dummy. When I see drilling assays, what is a good assay for drill core drilling after graphite?
So Northern Graphite, which is one of the only companies that's produced a PEA level document to date, which shows robust economics, as low as 2% graphite, but high purity, large flake is getting significant attention and shows potential for positive economics. So in the low end, I think 1.5% to 2%, but you're going to see some people who have results in the 10% range.
Mm-hmm.
But perhaps not 100% large diameter graphite, nor the recoveries that a Northern Graphite can attain. So this is a complicated, that's a very complicated question, and grade is not necessarily the king in this situation, but the combination of grade, large flake, and recoveries. Recoveries, of course, are only going to be able to come about after significant metallurgical testing. But you really want to look for the greater than 80 mesh component, and then compare that to existing products.
I think that's very important for the audience. Also er hat gerade gesagt, dass man es eigentlich nicht so direkt an den Grades einfach festhalten kann. Es ist ein besonders wichtiger Faktor, ist eben auch die sogenannte Mesh-Größe. Also Mesh ist für mich ein Sieb. Das heißt, je größer dass die Teile eben, die zusammenhängenden Teile eigentlich sind, desto wertvoller ist es auch dann im Endeffekt, wenn man es aus dem Gestein auslöst. Ist das richtig so, Joe? Habe ich das richtig so wiedergegeben?
Würde ich genauso sagen.
Genau.
When you sorry, how deep normally some deposit of graphite?
I think with all graphite deposits, you want to be in an open pit situation where your cost to move rock is minimal.
Okay.
These types of deposits are amenable to simple flotation techniques. It's not like rare metal deposits or some gold deposits, where it's complicated to recover the material. Freiburg University in Germany invented flotation technology well over 100, perhaps 150 years ago. This simple technology where, for instance, pine oil is a common reagent that you mix with your ore, and graphite, because it's fairly large diameter, very light specific gravity, is easily floated and can be recovered in these deposits. So overall, they're pretty low-cost operations. If you look at the PEA level documents the Northern Graphite's put out, or competitor companies to Northern Graphite, you're talking capital cost to put a 20 to 40,000 ton per year operation into production of probably $100 million or less. So it's not like sort of that generation of rare metal deposits that were discovered, where most companies are coming out with scoping documents and economic documents which show it costs $1 billion to put their deposits into production. These are relatively simple, relatively straightforward, and low cost. It's important to go back to that shortfall. If that million ton per year shortfall by 2020 can be met by the graphite mining industry, the world's largest mine currently is about 40,000 tons per year in China, maybe a little bit bigger. But if an average mine is about 20,000 tons per year and there's a million ton per year shortfall, 25 to 40 new mines need to come on stream by 2020 to meet that missing graphite component over the next several years. Whereas in the rare metal space, as we've seen, only 3 to 4 to 5 mines can come on stream and fill the world the Western world's shortfall.
Can I ask a question about this 40,000 tons per year mines? Is this the reason why the resource is so small normally, or why is the reason why we have only 40,000 tons mines and not 500,000 or 1 million tons mines? Normally, the economics going up when the scale going higher.
I completely agree with you, and you would think that graphite is a relatively common commodity, and not being so rare, you would see lots of massive deposits that can meet the world's shortfall just by turning on the amount of production. But that's not the case. When you look around at companies with 43-101 resource estimates, there are no real supermassive deposits. And I'm not sure why that is the case. Perhaps it's these types of deposits lend themselves to occurring in high-grade metamorphic environments where metasedimentary rocks or sedimentary rocks were subjected to high temperature, high pressure over a long period of time for the formation of coarse graphite. These environments tend to be produce potiform type deposits with lots of variation, and perhaps that's the reason why you don't see a lot of very large scale deposits.
Okay. Okay. Now I understand a little bit more. Wie schaut das mit dir aus, Helmut?
Yeah, I'm stepping into that area now. As I said, I'm an completely graphite dummy, but I know now I have to take care on the mesh size, on the depth, not so much on the grades, because the most important thing is the mesh size. The bigger, the better. Is that correct? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Certainly you don't want to get below a certain grade because at some point, I mean, it comes down to cost of the product you're extracting versus cost of production. If you go too low, I mean, you're going to have difficulty making a profit.
What means too low for you?
I would say below about 2%. I would say northern graphite is getting near the bottom edge of combination of grade. That project will likely work because of the fact that such a high proportion of their product is coarse grain and amenable to upgrading to the highest specs of product.
Is there one other or more others things what an investor should look before he invests in graphite deals? Maybe okay, the infrastructure is always a question, but maybe, I don't know, you cannot move the product too far from your existing mine to the whatever plant what you need, or is there any other things what the investor should look for?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Graphite's got to be considered an industrial mineral. So,
Tja.
So, jetzt haben wir uns sogar dran genommen.
Aber du kannst das vielleicht nochmal zusammenfassen, was bis jetzt ein bisschen...
So some of the key things to look for as an industrial mineral, you need to be in a jurisdiction which lends itself to fast tracking. I really believe amongst the junior companies this is going to be a race. So you need to be in a favorable mining jurisdiction. You absolutely have to be close to infrastructure.
Okay, that's a good point. Okay, vielleicht jetzt nochmal, aber das war ja, maybe I can make a small summary for everything. Ganz wichtig war, neben der Größe natürlich, ist natürlich, wie der Helmut schon gesagt hat, nicht unbedingt der Grade das Wichtigste. Unter 2% soll man aber trotzdem nicht fallen, sonst wird es schwierig, und auch die Infrastruktur ist extrem wichtig. Und der Fast Track sozusagen, wie schnell kann man diese geplante Mine auch in Produktion bringen. Wie wir vorher schon gehört haben, der Markt ist sehr aufgesplittet, der ist ungefähr 1 Million Tonnen groß, es gibt kaum größere Minen als wie 40.000 Jahrestonnen, das heißt es gibt relativ viele kleine Minen. Und er glaubt auch, dass neben dieser Mesh-Anzahl, also Größe, wie groß das Produkt ist, auch vor allem auch das Land oder die Judikatur, wo dieses Projekt ist, ausgesprochen wichtig ist. Denn es wird ein Wettrennen werden, wer die schnellsten Minen eigentlich in Produktion bringt. Und die ersten werden sozusagen dann auch richtig Geld verdienen.
Another question from me, are there some notable environmental risk of mining graphite? do you need some chemicals which are hazarding the environment?
In most cases, it's pretty benign, and there's nothing unusual typically associated with a graphite operation that you wouldn't see associated with other operations. Certainly, I would think it's more on the benign side. Sometimes graphite occurs with sulfides, so you have to make sure that you treat these sulfides correctly because they can be acid generating. And to create a higher purity product, in some cases, you need to subject your ore to acid to leach away or eat away at the sulfides themselves or other deleterious constituents. And so acid can be involved in the process, and sulfides can be involved in the process. So they're typically acid generating. So one way to neutralize that, of course, is having the presence of lime, which is a very common.
So it's similar to gold mining.
Similar to gold.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily like a rare earth deposit where you're going to have all sorts of oddball flotation chemistries and plus hydrofluoric acid, very powerful acids. This will be a much more straightforward flotation process typically.
Okay.
Also man kann eigentlich den Abbauprozess mit dem Abbau von Gold vergleichen, hat er uns gerade gesagt. Eben es ist, wenn Sulfide eben im Gestein drin sind, Sulfid heißt ja Schwefel dabei, glaube ich, wenn ich richtig bin, ne? Da kann es natürlich zum Entstehen von Säuren kommen, das wird in dem Schwefelsäure sein, ne? Der Prozess selbst ist mit Abbau von Gold vergleichbar, also mit demselben, wie soll ich sagen, mit demselben Drumherum eben, wie man es auch bei der Goldgewinnung eben braucht.
Ich habe jetzt überlegt, was brauchen wir denn? Wir wissen ungefähr, nach was muss man bohren. Wir müssen wissen, dass wir nach der Judikatur schauen müssen, wo sie sind. Wir wissen Environmental, also Umweltauflagen. Was brauchen wir eigentlich noch? Man, das was spezifisch zum Markt.
Do you need much power for refining the graphite? Electric?
No, nothing out of the ordinary.
Okay.
But having close proximity, because the capital costs of these projects is often quite low, and therefore achievable by a lot of junior companies, perhaps, having a close source of power, having a road, I mean, these are key attributes to being competitive in this industry, particularly given the fact that graphite is a fairly common commodity and therefore is going to occur in a wide variety of jurisdictions. You want to make sure your projects are located on a road, on a power line, so that as you're trying to develop your project and you're competing against another company that has all those things, you might lose a bit of a competitive edge, even though you might have a bit higher grade, combination of grain size, etc.
One question. So when you look at an overall market, you produce the high quality product. What is at the moment, in average, the margin what you create as a normal company or normal mine, not the best mine, not the worst mine, in middle?
Well, the normal market, I would say, or the normal production from a company producing graphite currently is roughly, I would say, on average about 15 to 20,000 tons per year.
No, but on coming to the point that you make on your profit side, how is the margin in? How much money you can make with per ton numbers? Is this or your production cost $750 per ton, and you sell it for $1,500, or what is in average from existing mines that we can see how profitable is this business?
Some existing, I don't know exact figures. A lot of graphite companies remain private. And Timkel mine in Quebec, for instance, is a private operation, and partly owed to the fact that I think it's so inexpensive to get in production compared to other commodities. But my understanding is, for instance, in a very general sense, on an average mine, let's say your production costs are about $1,000 per ton, and you can sell your average product for about $2,000 per ton. If you're producing 15,000 tons per year and you have $1,000 per ton margins, that's $15 million net per year for just an average to small size graphite mine.
Is there any website or something other side where I can follow the graphite price?
I have in front of me from Union Securities. I don't know if it's available publicly. A document in front of me that is a research article on one of the graphite companies, and within it they project the graphite prices going forward. I know a lot of the companies, such as Northern Graphite, for instance, will post on their website different prices. So I would just follow the different companies' websites, and they will tell you the graphite price. It's very similar to the rare earth market in that these are not commonly traded commodities, so the price is more set between a trader and a purchaser, and so the market's a little bit black. But in general, we know the prices from going to the different company websites. Okay,
I think, or I know enough, or maybe I don't know what the other two guys, but now we're looking more at your company. Are you agree with me, Helmut?
Ja. Also man muss, glaube ich, noch anmerken, dass es jetzt nicht irgendwo, so wie bei Kupfer, einen direkten Graphitpreis gibt, den was man eben irgendwo ablesen kann. Wie uns der Jody gesagt hat, es hängt wesentlich eben von der Mesh Size, also von der Größe des Materials ab. Und es ist auch nicht so wirklich, es gibt keinen wirklichen Spotmarkt nicht. Der Graphitpreis wird zum großen Teil oder zum überwiegenden Teil oder fast vollständig eigentlich zwischen Käufer und Verkäufer festgelegt. Das ist, glaube ich, eine wichtige Sache, weil eben, es kommt eben viel eben auf die Qualität des Graphites drauf an, und darum wird das von Fall zu Fall eben zwischen den Firmen eben festgelegt. Ich glaube, das ist ein wichtiger Punkt.
Ja, ich hätte noch vielleicht eine andere Frage. Jody, is there a premium the market is paying for a secure source of graphite compared to a source in China?
I'm not aware of anything specific. I mean, I've heard, I've just heard from other sources that certain companies may be offered premiums to provide a secure source. That wouldn't surprise me, particularly if the Chinese restrict exports of graphite or increase duties on graphite leaving the country. I would think, just like the rare earth space, you'll see people paying a premium for a secure source.
Right. Yeah,
so, but also for long-term contracts.
All the current graphite prices are for long-term contracts.
Okay.
It's likely very similar to the uranium space, where oftentimes you'll see a uranium price quoted at, say, $55 per ton, but that spot market is tiny. And real uranium is traded in 5-year plus contracts over the long term, and maybe significantly above that spot market.
Okay.
Okay.
So
then we go forward.
Strike is a TSX Venture listed company. It's got approximately 40 million shares outstanding. Fully diluted, I believe it's about 60. I don't know the exact share structure, but it's roughly in that range. I think it's currently trading in the 35-cent range, plus or minus a few cents. Has a fairly good daily volume, which
ja, so schnell kann es gehen. Und schauen wir mal nach, wie wo der aktuelle Kurs ist.
Increase in daily.
Und ich habe immer geglaubt, in Kanada gibt es ja eines der best ausgebautesten Internetnetze überhaupt. Anscheinend sind aber die europäischen Internetnetze wesentlich stabiler. Und von Abu Dhabi brauche ich gar nicht reden, weil da sicher ja nur ein Geist.
Ja, ich war ja auch zwischendurch mal weg hier irgendwie, aber okay.
Ja, aber das Volumen ist gar nicht so schlecht. Ich meine, aktueller Kurs ist 35 Cent. Wir haben 346.000 Aktien schon wieder getradet. Also das ist echt nicht schlecht. Das Tagesvolumen ist wirklich gut. Muss man ehrlicherweise sagen.
Das stimmt. Und ich glaube, eines von den wichtigsten Dinge an der TSX ist eben, dass sie ein kontinuierliches Volumen in einer Aktie eben etabliert. Das müssen keine Millionen sein, aber es muss täglich irgendwie eine gewisse Liquidität bestehen, dass man natürlich aufgenommene Positionen eher, man will sie ja irgendwann einmal verkaufen wieder, ne? Dass man Gewinne erzielt, dass man die wieder auch zu einem guten Preis eben verkaufen kann. Ne? Und dazu ist es eben notwendig, dass es zumindest an der TSX die notwendige Liquidität gibt. Ich würde gar nicht so sagen, dass Frankfurt die notwendige Liquidität bereitstellen muss, weil viele Leute fragen mich natürlich auch immer, da gibt es ja gar keinen Umsatz in dieser Aktie, ist eigentlich auch nicht so unbedingt hundertprozentig notwendig. Man muss einfach konsequent, also weiß nicht, man soll Aktien nie irgendwie so ins Bit dreschen oder aus dem Ast so unbedingt auf Biegen und Brechen wegkaufen. Man muss immer am Blick ein bisschen auf den kanadischen Markt geben, das ein bisschen umrechnen, vielleicht ein bisschen was dazu oder weggeben und dort soll man dann seinen Verkaufspreis setzen. Aber ein Verkauf Joe.
Wobei ich ja sowieso glaube, dass extrem viele Leute mittlerweile schon in Kanada direkt handeln. Fast jeder Online-Broker bietet einen direkten Handel in Kanada an. Also von daher glaube ich sowieso, dass wenn einer kauft, dann kaufen viele gleich drüben direkt. Julie, sorry, we discussed about your trading volume and that you have really heavy trading volume on your home exchange. And that's really important for a junior exploration company that you have great volume here. But we should use the good internet connection now to go forward to see more about your project.
I wish it was better. You know, and that trading volume really started in late January when Zim2 Capital Corp hosted a graphite conference in Vancouver. I'm not sure if you were at that conference, but that was really the start of a large volume for a lot of little junior companies that were involved in the graphite space.
Yeah, sometimes seem to do really a great job. We know the guys very well, so sometimes they're really and ahead of the market, must be said. So this is an interesting graph. You see that there was long time the material was flat, and now it's going really dramatically to the roof.
And the increase in spike is likely similar to that time frame when lithium started to become in vogue, because lithium graphite batteries, lithium ion batteries, for every pound of lithium in a battery, in a rechargeable lithium ion battery, there's approximately anywhere from 15 to 30 pounds of graphite. Graphite has that negative charge in the battery, and this is really an indication of the takeoff of the electronic space, of the hybrid car space, of the electric car space, and sort of the battery market as a whole. Mm-hmm. And I could just envision this price continuing to climb, but you know, like all commodities, it will sort of level out at a comfortable range. And I've seen projections that it'll probably level out in this current price range of $2,500 to $3,500 a ton.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, I don't believe that this chart, this line are already here.
What?
I hope. Yeah, we have here some lines what we use in the beginning. So now we remove it. So your project in Saskatchewan and Quebec, and he is Vic.
Isn't Quebec famous for graphite?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Isn't Quebec it famous for graphite mines?
The largest Canadian producer of the two Canadian producers is Timkel Mine, and it's located in southern Quebec, not far from Ottawa or Montreal. And that mine produces approximately 20,000 tons per year of graphite, of which I believe a small percentage is that coarse grain graphite, something less than 20-25%.
Mm-hmm.
Historically, the jurisdictions that we've had a lot of success in that are very favorable to mining exploration and often ranked very high by the Fraser Institute annual survey are Saskatchewan and Quebec. We started looking for graphite projects well over a year ago, being able to foresee this sort of expansion of the graphite market and expansion for graphite to mine. And the two jurisdictions, because of a combination of geology, logistics, and jurisdiction, were Saskatchewan and Quebec. I've worked in Saskatchewan personally in the uranium exploration days since the late 1980s, and I've had nothing but success there. I've never had a hindrance to doing operations. You can permit drilling in under 30 days typically, and one of the very positive attributes of Quebec, they're very mining focused, very mining centric, and very supportive of the mining industry. When you're doing exploration in remote parts of Quebec, you get up to 40% of your exploration dollars back from the Quebec government. So that's a big plus. We've acquired 3 projects to date, 2 in Saskatchewan, 1 in Quebec. The project we've acquired in Saskatchewan, the first project we acquired, is called Deep Bay East. It's immediately adjacent to the east of the Peter Ballantine First Nation, which hosts the Deep Bay Graphite Mine. The Deep Bay Graphite Mine, it's not, don't mistake me, it's not our project, but it was identified at the same time as our project. This mine has a few million tons of historic resources in about the 10% graphite range, of which about 60% is this coarse grain graphite. This is a very interesting project, and it is fully permitted. It is not yet started production, but it's full.
So, Joe.
So.
Also er hat glaube ich, gerade gesagt, eben, dass eben Ihre Lagerstätte in der Nähe ist von der Deep Bay Graphitmine, die zwar momentan zurzeit nicht in Betrieb ist, aber vollkommen genehmigt ist. Und sie wurde also ihre Lagerstätten, die Deep Bay ist, wurde zum selben Zeitpunkt eben entdeckt wie die Deep Bay Graphite Mine.
I see some First Nation reservoirs. Is First Nation an issue up to this area?
The stippled area is the Peter Ballantine First Nation.
Mm-hmm.
And the historic Deep Bay Graphite Mine is within that First Nation. Our project is immediately to the east of it, so we're not within First Nation lands.
Okay, it's a positive.
I'm assuming it's a positive, yeah, that we'll be able to work with them as opposed to against them. Both these projects were originally found in the late 1960s by Shared Gordon Mines, which is a famous Canadian company or explorer. And then in sort of they did drilling and geophysical surveys. Graphite has a very high electrical conductivity. So if you fly an airborne electromagnetic survey, such as very common exploring for uranium in the Athabasca Basin of Saskatchewan, if you fly an electromagnetic survey, you get a very strong conductor associated with graphite typically. And so from a geophysical perspective, this type of geophysical survey is very good at elucidating graphite occurrences. So these deposits or occurrences were found in the late 1960s, and a company called Superior Graphite acquired them in the early 1970s, and they followed up with additional drilling, surface trenching and sampling, mini bulk sampling, mineralogy, mineral processing. They did logistical studies. They did sort of scoping level or a scoping document that they filed as assessment at that time. Yeah.
So you have just historical data?
Ja, scheinbar, weil das steht nämlich da erinnern, die 1,8 Millionen Tonnen mit 10,32%.
Nein, ich glaube, das bezieht sich auf die da herüber.
Bist du da sicher?
Nein, eben nicht. So,
Doch, stand daneben. Da steht unten in dem Kleingedruckten steht, dass das für das Nachbarprojekt ist.
Okay.
Was jetzt für ein Projekt oder für das andere Projekt?
Na, mach doch nochmal eine Folie zurück. Oder mach nochmal auf die 7. So, unten steht, the resource estimate for an adjacent property is historic in nature, and the company has not done sufficient work to confirm the estimate. Da steht, adjacent heißt daneben.
Ja.
So, this is the 1.8 million tons at 10% graphite is from the deep bay graphite mine or from your deposits?
That's from the Deep Bay Graphite Mine. That's from the adjacent project. Our project has not had a historical estimate of any kind.
Okay. But there are some okay, we see it here. These are your historical drilling results. Or
Exactly.
Okay.
And so what it showed is the historic exploration identified a conductor, i.e. a graphite-bearing horizon in these high-grade metamorphic rocks that was roughly a few kilometers in length, anywhere to a maximum of 35 meters across. And it showed relative connectivity, and therefore we have developed a conceptual exploration model predicated on sort of that 25 to 35 meters width, 2 kilometers in strike length, 100 meters depth. And conceptually, we can envision a target exploration size of 20 million tons of graphite, the grade of which is completely unknown because there's only been limited drilling and surface trenching. But if we can get in that 2 to 10% range, I think we have a valid project.
One question before we go further. What kind of geophysical methods you use for graphite, or you what's kind of
electromagnetics?
Electromagnetics.
Electromagnetics. And so what you see in this image on this screen is you see a. Sorry, I'm trying to find the. You see the historical conductor. This is a VTEM survey which we've just completed about 3 months ago. It's an electromagnetic survey where they tow a loop underneath a helicopter and they put a current in the air and they read the current coming from the ground, and that highlights the graphite. This is the historic conductor. This was a previously untested conductor identified by the electromagnetics, and what we believe is this particular conductor, the historic one's actually a fold, perhaps folded back on itself. And so that gives us sort of twice the exploration potential for this project that we had previously identified based on the historic work.
Do you do internal calculation on it? How large is it?
No, that 20 million ton number that you see there is a conceptual exploration target. And it's in part predicated on the historic work done by Superior Graphite and Sherrod Gordon before that, but it's not a historic resource estimate. It's nothing that can be relied upon. It's more a conceptual target for this particular conductor. What we intend to do this year over the coming months is clean out the historic trenches that are available. Perhaps we can go to the next slide.
Oops, sorry.
For some reason it zoomed. There we go. So what we intend to do over the coming months, over the summer of 2012, is go back and clean out these historic trenches, resample them, send material off to one of the laboratories for geochemical testing, for assay, and then see if we can actually float these products, what the mineralogy likes, what the percentage of coarse grain material is. As you can see, the results vary anywhere from 4% to a high of 27% in these historic trenches. And the historic work by Superior Graphite in the mid-1970s showed that 40% of this material was coarse grained. They achieved recoveries based on basic flotation methods using pine oil of 85% plus or minus a few percent. They were able to produce a very high purity carbon product of 85% plus or minus a few percent. And recently there's public information been disclosed on the adjacent property, which we believe is a continuation of the same rocks onto our property, where they shipped a small bulk sample to China for further upgrading. And on the Deep Bay graphite mine, they're able to produce a product as high as 99+% carbon, graphitic carbon.
Which drill method you use? You used core, or you use RC, or what you kind of drills you use?
We'll use core drilling in this area.
Okay.
Yeah, and we want to make sure, part of the problem with taking bulk samples from surface trenches, and we have to be very careful about this, is that the first 2 to 4 to 5 meters can be weathered. And graphite weathers very easily, so once it's exposed to snow, to wind, to rain, it can break down quite readily. And if you've ever seen historic drill core that's got graphite in it that's been exposed only a few years, it breaks apart quite readily once it's exposed to the elements. So we want to get a little bit deeper and make sure when we do come here and drill that we get fresh material, so you get a representative idea of how it truly behaves when it's processed.
Okay. Ich glaube, das ist ein ganz wichtiger Punkt, was man beschreiben sollte. Graphit verwittert sehr leicht an der Oberfläche. Das heißt, durch die Wettereinflüsse wird, ich sag's einmal ganz salopp, ich weiß nicht, ob es so stimmt, das Graphit, ich will nicht sagen weggewaschen, aber so ähnlich kann ich mir so ungefähr feststellen. Das heißt, man muss schon 3-4 Meter tief gehen mit den Trenches, dass man wirklich wieder, wie soll man sagen, repräsentative Ergebnisse bekommt. Ist das richtig so, Joe?
Yeah, absolute. Before we go forward, please can you tell us a little bit more about what you're planning this year for this project?
Our plans for this particular project for this year, for the coming months, are to go back to and locate the historic trenches, to clean them out and take representative samples of those trenches to try and get a better idea of the width of the structure or its continuity. We're going to sample as many outcrops as we can because we believe what you see on surface, given the historic drill holes information, it's logical to assume that it projects to depth with a certain degree of confidence. And therefore, we think this is a pretty inexpensive project for us to explore, and we'll advance it very quickly to the processing stage, where we're going to be able to see, can we produce a saleable concentrate, how high, what kind of recoveries can we expect to achieve, and to a large degree, that's reproducing the work of Superior Graphite from the mid-1970s, but using more modern flotation techniques that have evolved over the last 30 years.
You
know, always the investors wants to have drilling results. They're looking always for drilling results. When do you intend to drill the property?
In this particular property, our intention is to drill it this fall after we get the results back from the surface sampling. The reason being, the first project we're going to drill, we'll be discussing next, is Simon Lake. And the second reason in our strategy, we want to make sure we drill those areas which have the ideal combination of grade, grain size, ability to process, and that's where we're going to want to build out our resources over time. So we maximize value at one specific location. We really believe in the Saskatchewan opportunity. That's a great place to permit, to fast track any potential operation. But we want to make sure we do this at the right location.
What do you think is this project your major project, or the Saskatchewan project?
Simon Lake, which is the next project we'll talk about.
Okay.
Two last question on this project. Infrastructure, and can you drill this, or can you work on this project the whole year, or is there exploration season?
So this project is located immediately east of Deep Bay. As you notice, Deep Bay is that lake that is just west of the Deep Bay graphite mine. So the infrastructure here is not as good as at the Deep Bay graphite mine. Access currently is by float plane or helicopter. During winter months, it's by skidoo. So we can drill this project any time of year. But at the moment, we want to just get surface crews in and make sure that we can, like we mentioned before, identify those best locations. Because if we're moving in a rig with a helicopter, we want to make sure we maximize our dollar values.
Okay.
Okay.
There's the Simon Lake, the flagship.
Simon Lake.
Simon Lake's located a few hundred kilometers further north on Highway 905, which leads to all the uranium mining in the eastern part of the Athabasca Basin of Saskatchewan. Highway 905 leads to Cigar Lake. It leads to Rabbit Lake Mill, McLean Lake, Rough Rider, which is recently purchased by RTZ from Hathor. Our project is located not in the Athabasca Basin, a few hundred kilometers south of it, as a matter of fact, and it's south of a large lake called Wollaston Lake. So you can see the claim package that we originally acquired is in excess of 10,000 hectares. Like Simon Lake, like Deep Bay East, we've already flown this property with a EM survey to identify the conductors. This project was discovered in the 1960s and drilled in the mid-1960s and again in the late 1970s by a company called Woolix Exploration. They were looking for base metal deposits at the time. This is in the eastern part of the Wollaston Thrust and Full Belt, which is a high-grade metamorphic assemblage of rocks. Same assemblage of rocks which underlies the eastern part of the Athabasca Basin, and which gives rise to so many prolific uranium mines. People looking for uranium in the Athabasca Basin historically flew airborne surveys, drilled conductors. 99% of the time they find graphite, not uranium.
So, one question. If you have a look on the core, do you see the graphite in the core?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's often visually quite striking. You can see it readily. Most geologists will be able to identify it and describe it.
So you have black flakes in the core or something like that?
Yeah, you'll either have almost solid bands or black flakes or a mixture, any kind of gradation in between, sort of the tiny flakes and the bands. So in the 1970s, this project was...
Sorry, go ahead.
In the 1970s, this project was explored for base metals, and what they did was they conducted airborne surveys, ground surveys, identified a series of conductors, and drill tested those conductors. What they found was graphite, not base metals. And so geologically, they described these samples as best they could. They described, for instance, there's a hole 72-2 where they describe over about 150-foot interval, which is 60, 70-meter interval. They describe anywhere from a few percentage of graphite up to a maximum of 70% over a wide interval. They describe in some of these drill holes coarse grain graphite. There's drill holes within the southwest part of the property, not shown on this map, that show up to 4 millimeters flake-sized graphite. And this was by 2 or 3 different exploration companies at different times looking for base metals. They never assayed the core and analyzed for graphite because it was not their target commodity. But we believe, because of the quality of work done by these different groups, and the fact is they had no reason to mislead anybody with what they were observing at different times, that they're going to be fairly accurate because they all support each other. What we noticed when we flew our survey is all the historic drill holes sort of lined up along this extremely long 25-kilometer conductor. And all of them had hit various intervals of graphite, variably described as anywhere from fine-grained, of course, all the way to coarse-grained. We think because of the length of this conductor that it's quite wide, that we have a very big target size here.
Okay, what you're planning on this project in special? So how many meters?
So we've received our drill permit.
Or trenching or whatever.
So we've received our drill permits. We plan to drill 10 holes on this conductor spread out over the 25-kilometer length. We're currently interpreting the data.
So, was sehr interessant war, was er da erzählt hat, also eigentlich haben die vorangegangenen Explorationsfirmen immer für Base Metals, also Kupfer, Nickel, Zink, gebohrt und haben eigentlich Graphit gefunden. Die Bohrkerne seinerzeit wurden gar nicht so genau analysiert, weil sie einfach das nicht gefunden haben, nachdem man gesucht hat. One question from me is the historical cores, are they still available for reassaying?
We haven't been able to locate the historic core, unfortunately. This area has been subject since the time of the drilling to a number of forest fires, and we believe the core has probably been lost or burnt in those forest fires. And certainly, even if it was available, it's because graphite weathers so easily, it might be a little bit misleading in terms of its representation of what's actually there.
So you have to re-drill do you know the location from the historic drill holes? Are there?
Yeah, we're comfortable that we can identify the location of the historic drill holes within anywhere from extremely accurate to within a few meters to 25 to 50 meters away.
Okay.
So we're going to twin 3 of the historic drill holes to try and get an idea of the accuracy of what those people were describing back in the 1970s, and then we're going to test various facies of the geophysics to see how what it represents in terms of actual rocks and graphite content. We know there's extremely high grades of graphite here visually. How that translates into an actual assay, we're not entirely sure, but we're going to see over the coming months as we start this drill program. The drill program's budgeted at about $750.
When you will start this drilling?
Pardon me?
When you will start this drill program?
Within the next few weeks.
Okay. So we can expect the first essays, let's say, in 2 months.
Yeah, that's a very good time frame. By the time you finish the first hole is usually a learning experience for the drillers. We'll probably split and send out the first drill hole quite quickly to get an idea of what the results are like. So let's say we get those samples back in 6 weeks. I would say 2 months is a good time frame.
Okay. Interessant ist, was er zuerst gesagt hat, Sie haben relativ gute Beschreibungen von den vorangegangenen, also von der Exploration aus den 70ern, wie auch immer, die Bohrkerne sind leider nicht mehr vorhanden, man kann sie jetzt praktisch nicht mehr neu analysieren, die sind irgendwo bei einem Feuer vernichtet worden. Er sagt aber auch, es macht jetzt gar nicht so was aus, weil sich eben Graphit relativ schnell verwittert und darum würden diese alten Bohrkerne auch gar nicht mehr die originalen Ergebnisse widerspiegeln. Sie werden jetzt einige Löcher, ich sag mal, dort in der Nähe, wo sie eben die guten Beschreibungen bekommen haben, einfach nochmal, also nicht dasselbe Loch nochmal bohren, aber vielleicht daneben rein nochmal bohren, dass sie einfach eine gute Idee bekommen von dem ganzen Verlauf der Graphit Mineralisierung, ja, ist glaube ich der richtige Ausdruck. Man sieht es da anscheinend hat es da über ein Intervall von 68 Meter Graphitgehalte bis zu 70% gegeben. Das heißt, wenn man das wieder bohren könnte, ich glaube, dass das schon sehr, sehr sensationell wäre, weil er hat ja eingangs auch beschrieben, dass eben, ich sag mal so, die Untergrenze sind 2%, mit dem kann man noch leben, aber 70% ist natürlich sehr, sehr viel. Finde ich sehr, sehr interessant, das Simon Lake Projekt. Und mal schauen, was er noch so zu erzählen hat. Jody, please go ahead. I talked about the 70% graphite across 68 meters. For me, that's sensational.
Remember, that's up to, that's a maximum of 70, and back, sort of the descriptions range from about 5% up to 70%. And it's important that people understand that visual estimates are not necessarily accurate. They're only presented as an indication that there is significant graphite there. And only once we have an assay will we be able to give you an accurate reading. But nonetheless, that does sound sensational, doesn't it? So we intend to drill 10 holes, roughly, if you follow me, along the length of this particular conductor at various locations. And once we get the perfect, what we see as the best combination of grade, thickness, proximity to the surface, so you can surface mine it, and the ability to process it, because we're going to be taking these samples and shipping them right off to a lab, metallurgical lab, and subjecting them to flotation tests as well. Once we get the best combination of those factors, we're going to come back in August, September with a much larger drill program and hopefully build out a resource around those best drill holes.
So, again, one question from a graphite dummy again. Graphite is carbon. Coal is also still carbon. What's the difference between coal and graphite?
Coal has lots of other organic material. Coal's more of an organic. It's got hydrogen associated with it. There's oxygen. There's sulfur in it. Coal is more of an organic compound that hasn't been subjected to those pressures and temperatures to remove those other constituents. Mm-hmm. So if you were to take coal and you were to subject to extreme heat, temperature, pressure over a long period of time, you would remove volatile matter, you would remove moisture, you would remove perhaps the sulfur, and so that's the general difference. Both will burn, quite frankly.
So, so graphite is the ultra-rich coal.
It's ultra.
No, it's not ultra-rich coal. It's only C as a symbol from chemical system. Coal is a CH, whatever you call a combination of it.
But both are, in this particular environment, coal's organic in origin, and so is this particular graphite. So you had organic matter that has been subjected to extreme pressure, temperature. These rocks in this area are 1.8 billion years old, roughly. So they're quite old. A lot of Canadian coal deposits that are being mined are Cretaceous in age, so 65 million years plus or minus. Nowhere near subject to the temperature extremes, pressure extremes that will have produced this sort of coarse-grained graphite over a longer period of time.
So the graphite with a little bit more luck and a little bit more pressure and a little bit more heat, it could be diamonds. Is that correct?
Yes, for sure.
Well,
it's the same.
It would take a lot more pressure and not quite so much more heat. Diamonds don't like heat, but they like pressure, that's for sure.
Okay. So, Graphit ist ultrareiner Kohlenstoff, so könnte man es eigentlich bezeichnen, oder Joe?
Nein, es ist reiner Kohlenstoff.
Ja, es ist reiner Kohlenstoff.
So, und die Struktur zwischen Diamant und Graphit kommt nur in der also in der Kristallstruktur der Unterschied. Und eben, wie ich schon gesagt habe, der Druck ist ein anderer, nicht so stark die Hitze, aber der Druck ist anders, und wenn es natürlich noch mehr Druck drauf gelegen wäre in diesem Gestein, wird daraus Diamant geworden. Deswegen gibt es ja auch genug Diamantminen in Kanada. Aber da ist halt in der Gesteinsstruktur nicht so viel Druck drauf gelegen, und deswegen kommt einfach dann Graphit raus. Also eigentlich haben sie Pech gehabt, aber wären es wahrscheinlich Diamanten gewesen, hätten wir andere schon gefunden.
Ja, Diamanten finden. Finding diamonds is always to seek for a needle in an wie sagt man, in einen Hay-Haufen,
Heuhaufen. Ich glaube, wir bleiben beim Deutschen, ja nicht da.
Ja.
Nein, ich hasse Diamanten-Exploration. Du findest Mikrodiamanten überall im Core, und dann ist es einfach nicht wirtschaftlich zum Arbeiten. Also da ist mir lieber so bis zu 70% Graphit. Da weiß ich mir nicht, das kann ich nicht mehr für einen Kugelschreiber verwenden.
Außerdem ist bei Diamanten ja so, wenn du noch Kupfer oder Gold hast, hast du eine Zone von, keine Ahnung, 200 Meter Breiten und 3 Kilometer Länge. Und wenn du nach Diamanten suchst, hast du einen Schlot, der was, keine Ahnung, wenn du Glück hast, 30 Meter Durchmesser hast. Ne?
Ja, dafür geht er vielleicht 5000 Meter tief.
Ja, da hat man was davon. Ne?
Ja, wenn es doppelt tut, das schon.
Mhm. We are talking a little bit about diamonds, how difficult it is to find it. It's more easy to find graphite.
Far more easy.
But diamonds are girls' best friends, and it's really hard to give them a graphite ounce of graphite. I think they are not so satisfied.
I don't think you'll have much luck if you're giving away.
Diamonds are the girls' best friends. Graphite should be the investor's best friend.
Absolutely.
So
the third property we acquired is in southern Quebec. It's proximal. It's within about 20 kilometers of that existing Timkel mine, or the only large producer of graphite in Canada. As I mentioned before, Timkel produces about 20,000 tons per year of graphite, and our project is located about 3 separate claim blocks within 20 kilometers to the east of Timkel. These properties have never been drilled, but there's over 100 outcrops have been sampled. There's been electromagnetic surveys conducted on the property, so conductors have been identified. Surface sample results range from a few percent up to almost 18-19% graphite. And so what we intend to do this summer with Timkel, because it's got, or with our wagon graphite project east of the Timkel mine, we'll follow up, we'll take outcrop samples, we'll verify the historic results. Coupled with the historic geophysics, we'll quickly develop drill targets, apply for drill permits, and like the Deep Bay East graphite property, we anticipate this one we would be drilling sometime in September. Historically,
das dritte Projekt liegt eben auch in Quebec und es wurden schon einige Samples genommen, man sieht ja da am Slide, wird im Herbst gebohrt, sagen wir mal so. Please go ahead.
Historically, Quebec is a very business-friendly jurisdiction for mining. As we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, you get up to 40% of your exploration dollars back when working in the province. So we anticipate drill permits could be applied for and obtained very quickly. And again, this project has shown coarse-grained graphite from surface samples. Some of the surface samples showed up to 3 millimeter flake size, which is an ideal size when looking for graphite.
Only quick question in between. Did you acquire all your projects from the Zimtu guys, or?
All 3 projects came through the Zimtu group.
Okay. And Zimtu also sold a couple of other graphite projects to various other companies, as you probably know. I know that you are very close to Zim2. So could we assume that you have been able to kind of cherry pick the first couple of projects for Stripe?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's a good assumption. We were if you notice in the Zim2 news releases, I believe we were the first company to do a transaction with Zim2.
Okay.
And so just like with the any standard exploration cycle, sort of the highest quality projects are obtained first, and then people get more and more grassroots projects as the exploration cycle wears on. And this is very much part of the race we alluded to earlier on.
Okay.
So this is our exploration plan that's going to be instituted for all the projects. You know, the first phase is to prioritize your drill targets through a combination of historic examination, electromagnetic surveys. Then you prioritize those drill targets. Then you go into your second phase, which in the case of Simon Lake is going to be drilling. We're about to start that drill program, roughly 2,500 to 3,500 meters in 10 holes. That drill program will take a few months. Concurrent with that drill program, we're going to assay the samples. We're going to send them off to a laboratory to make sure we can process those samples and have a reasonable idea that we can produce a good quality product. And then we'll come back in the fall, and we'll do definition drilling around what we think are our best targets at Simon Lake, and more exploratory drilling at the other projects, Deep Bay and the Wagon property. And then hopefully before the end of the year, or perhaps the first quarter of 2013, we can have a resource estimate of some time, or of some magnitude, based on the work we did during 2012.
Are you already fully funded for this year's exploration program, or do you need to raise some additional capital?
There's about $750,000 in the bank currently, and that's our budget for the Simon Lake drill program.
Okay.
So we will have to continue on with that summer drill program and that fall drill program and the metallurgical work. We're going to have to raise additional funds.
Okay. Good. So,
Blair Way has just been appointed CEO. He came to us from Ventana. Ventana, even though I personally didn't follow the story that close, I understand was a gold deposit identified in Colombia, which was bought out by a third project for almost $1.5 billion recently. He was VP of project development for Ventana. He's a geologist, but more, as opposed to practicing geology, his background has been advancing projects and making sure the right engineering teams, the right technical teams are in place to advance those projects. So he recently joined the team as CEO of the company. And he's going to make sure, I was just in Toronto with him last week, and he's going to make sure we advance these projects in the right fashion as quickly as possible. He's currently Australia-based, and he's moving to Vancouver in the next little while to oversee Strike Graphite.
okay. So, Joe, any questions?
I think we are coming really close to the end here. So a little bit of the share structure. If you're Do you have any clue where the warrants are what's the warrants exercise price is?
I believe the warrant exercise price ranges from 15 cents to 25 cents. So they're all in the money because last I looked, the share price.
Okay, and the expiry date?
I don't know those off the top of my head. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. We can look. Okay. Jungs, irgendwelche Fragen? Eigentlich, die Adresse kommt mir relativ bekannt vor.
Yeah, me auch. Actually, the corporate office is in the same building as Zim2, right?
2 floors below Zim2.
Right. Oh, that's another fellow guy we know. Okay. Anyway,
It's
anyway, yeah. First of all, Jody, thank you very much for giving us this really interesting insight. First into the graphite market and what we as investors have to look for. So thanks for this educational part. Second, thank you very much for introducing the story of Strike Graphite to us. Which I think actually this is kind of my first view I'm taking on a graphite deal. So I think that all makes sense from my point of view. The only thing, and maybe this is something we should also talk about, is that graphite seems to be like the flavor of the year, right? And the Vancouver crowd seems to invent a new commodity every year. Like it was, the cycle. It was moly, then it was potash, it was lithium, followed by rare earths, and this year it's graphite. Why is this? Do you have any idea why this always has to be a flavor metal of the year? Because, as you said, the shortage for graphite, which is predicted to be the 1 million tons or whatever it was, that's not coming out of the blue. That wasn't discovered January 1st, 2012, right? So why is it that since January, when Joe and Helmut and myself have been in Vancouver, and the Zim2 guys hosted the graphite conference, this was like the Kickstarter for a bunch of graphite deals which are now coming to life since the PDAC. So why didn't somebody started a graphite deal in June last year?
Well, there was a few graphite deals even sooner. There was Northern Graphite, and what I think it is, this sort of herd mentality. This goes back to the 70s. It's in the 70s it was copper, and then it was gold, and then it was some other commodities. And it's been that way ever since I've been in the business, which, is the late 1980s. We seem to cycle from one commodity to the other, and almost as a herd. And really, it's those initial players that get the early best projects that seem to float to the top. And Zim2, having identified the graphite market as at the very, very early stages, I think is one of those more favorable positions, like Northern Graphite, like Flinders, which is a private company recently gone public, like Strike perhaps. Strike was there quite early with their projects. But Zim2, of course, as you're fully aware, they take a different track with respect to how they get involved. They like to be equity partners in these projects and let other people do the risk work. Why does graphite get the attention? I think people look at rare earths, and they look at what happened in the rare earth space. I don't think, though, that these graphite companies are going to attain, in the short term, those very unrealistic market capitalizations where you saw Rare Element Resources, for instance, it hit almost $20, or perhaps it almost passed $20, or an Avalon exceed $10 per share. And, I think one of the big differences between graphite and those projects is ultimately when economic level documents started being published, people saw that to put a rare metal mine in production, a lot of the companies, depending on their project, they needed $1 billion. That's incredible for a little junior company to achieve, if not almost impossible. Whereas if you look at the Northern Graphite economic documents, we're talking $100 million range, which is an order of magnitude less. That's actually something a little junior company with the right team can achieve. And I think it's important when you look at these projects to make sure that you have someone like a Blair Way as your CEO, somebody who's been there in the past and had success in the past in actually constructing and developing mines, as opposed to different companies which might not have those technical teams on board.
Okay. No, I totally agree. Maybe another question. When I talk to some of my Vancouver contacts, it seems to be quite tough right now to raise money for the small junior exploration companies. Is this also the same situation for graphite deals, or are graphite deals financed by the brokerage community because it's kind of hot right now? Is it easier if you're a graphite deal to raise capital?
I think graphite would probably be the best space to finance in right now. I was in Toronto last week, met with some institutions to try and explain our story, and seem to get a lot of positive feedback and a lot of interest. So I think it's, I've seen a few other graphite juniors close financings in the last few weeks. So I think graphite is the one space. You know, I don't understand the markets right now. I see a lot of little junior gold companies that I follow. I personally invest in the markets all the time, like everybody else, and I can buy certain junior companies with a 6 million ounce resource for cash value. They're getting no dollar value for their gold resources. It doesn't really make sense. There's either a lot of opportunities, or the market's telling you that gold's going down significantly, but you know what the market's potentially telling you is all commodities are going down if you look at the junior space at the moment. So I don't think that's the case. The summer seems to be a low point for little junior explorers, and the fall is a good time to be invested. So,
yeah.
When do you intend to raise additional capital in fall or now?
After this drill program. I'm not a director of the company. I'm on their advisory board, and so my understanding is they're going to need capital soon. If someone offers it to them, they're likely to take it. The share price is quite strong, 35 cents. It's reasonable time to potentially to raise capital. So I think they very much see that this is a race. And they want to make sure, because they were one of the first companies to acquire graphite projects prior to that ZIM2 conference, they want to make sure they're leading this race.
The interesting thing for me is that if you re-drill the second, I lost the name, the second project.
Simon Lake.
Simon Lake, where the 70 meters with 70% graphite. If you re-drill this and you will find this area again, I think the market will react very, very positive on these drilling results. So I think it's a very interesting company for me, because we can assume that you will find this high grade graphite area again, and yeah, it's very interesting for me, because it's very interesting at the share price now.
Well, and that's why we're drilling Simon Lake first. Just like you are interested in it, that got our attention as geologists and as technical people as well. Multiple historic drill programs intersecting graphite. Recent EM survey which showed a 25-kilometer long conductor. It's proximal to roads, so it's got great infrastructure. It's in a mining-friendly jurisdiction. We think we can reproduce those results, and so we're quite excited about being able to reproduce those results. And if we do, I think you're right. I think it'll get lots of attention.
When did you do your last private placement? At which price?
I believe there was I'll have to look on the. I'd have to look back in the market, but I believe there was a 25-cent financing about 6 months ago, roughly.
Okay.
If you just give me a second, I can look back into the market.
And maybe if you can check the share structure. So is there any big institutional investors in it? On how much? Well, what's the percentage of insiders and management? And I guess that ZIM2 is a big shareholder. So what's the percentage of ZIM2? Approximately.
I believe ZIM2 has a few million shares. They would be the biggest institution. I know there was a couple smaller institutional investors in Strike. I'm not the right person to ask that, unfortunately. Okay. I wish I could give you an answer.
No worries.
I see February 9th there was a financing at 17.5 cents that was closed, and that had a warrant with 25 cents. And that financing was for about $1.2 million. So as you can see, the strike doesn't have a lot of overhead currently. That 1.2 million has gone to fund about $250,000 worth of work, including those airborne surveys that we've done completed so far. Plus, there's about a $750,000 budget for Simon Lake.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we know now much more about the graphite market and much more about strike. Thank you for your coming. Thank you for.
Joe, Entschuldigung, hallo. Ich weiß jetzt nicht, ob wir das nicht machen, aber sollten wir nicht vielleicht den Chat aufmachen, ob es noch Fragen zu Strike gibt, solange der Joe noch da ist? Also überlege ich jetzt gerade, weil.
Ups,
macht doch Sinn, oder? Weil ich weiß nicht, wie lange er jetzt noch dabei ist und wenn wir gleich über den Markt sprechen, dann kommen ja andere Fragen. Also.
Selbstverständlich. Der Chat sollte offen sein, also Sie sollten die Möglichkeit haben, jetzt auch Fragen zu Strike zu schreiben. Und ja.
So, ich hole mir noch kurz einen Red Bull oder irgendwas, bevor es zu Ende ist.
Siehst du irgendwas? Also ich sehe nichts im Moment.
Nee, also sagen wir mal so, wenn es keine Fragen mehr gibt, dann würde ich Judy ganz gern entlassen aus unserem Chat. Der hat immerhin 1,5 Stunden jetzt uns Rede und Antwort gelassen.
Da kommt schon die erste.
Ja,
Thank you for the opportunity, guys.